And also, I noticed that you have been, very, experienced in dealing a lot of issues in the creative industry. And, the UK is very strong for its, media, culture, and sports-related industry. And I don't know whether or not you might be able to give some advice for any Chinese companies who might be interested to explore any opportunity working with their UK equivalents.
Well, this is a most fantastic agenda, most fantastic agenda. For my money, I mean, because you have to look at the things that you're strong in when you're doing business and you're trading, you're investing or whatever. I think one of the very great strengths of the UK, and of course we've got all sorts of strengths in pharmaceuticals, in specialist manufacturing, motor cars, aviation and so on, but for me, because of course I've been a spokesman for culture, media and sport, the whole area of the creative industries is incredibly important. And you can start doing that, you can start collaboration with Chinese higher education institutions, say with Central St. Martin's, with our film schools, with, at that sort of undergraduate, postgraduate level. And then you can start thinking about, well, how do we partner in investment terms? And, it's right across the industry. Our advertising industry is very heavily involved now in China. But for instance, our film industry, we haven't yet got the partnerships together, and I know there are many creative business parks that are being created in China, and there's not really a very clear idea of exactly how those business parks can operate. Should they be film studios? Can we get the expertise from Britain or Hollywood or whatever it may be? And then you've got the whole area of specialist knowledge, fashion, animation, broadcasting, even skills in terms of constructing film sets and sets for broadcast and so on. There's a huge amount of interest, and of course our music industry is quite popular in China. It's one of our great export industries, but we should be able to collaborate in terms there. A lot of it's about, well, now, how do we go about it? Is it partnership? Is it Chinese companies investing in the UK? Should we have publishers that publish both Chinese books and English books? Where do we go from here? I think the potential is very, very great, but we have to work out how best we partner in all these areas, and you can't overnight do that. But I know that, in terms of our sort of UK storytelling ability, I think we've got, quite a lot of things to offer China in terms of the way that your creative industries could really benefit from collaboration with us.
Of course, and there's another really famous Chinese corporation called the Wanda Corporation, and they have been recently launching quite big, initiative about their, entertainment, projects, and they recently launched like a big, project in China, and they even got hold of Clement Jones. She's from Wales.
Yes,
and
yes.
She was there because she was really known, in China.
Yeah.
Together with Leonardo DiCaprio and other, big names in Hollywood. So I think probably in the near future, this kind of exchange can be more, regular.
I'm sure that's right, and we will be known for things other than purely Premier League football,
Well, we love football. That's a top secret. And also, I know you have such a wide range of expertise, and you pretty much started your, political career in laws as the health spokesperson.
Yes.
And you also have been like the chairman for the council for the London School of Pharmacy, where you have been doing a lot of really active campaign about pharmacy and its future in this country.
Yes.
So I don't know if you might be able to give some advice about Chinese UK companies' collaborations in the health sector.
Well, it's very broad. You could take pharmacy just for a start, and there are a lot of Chinese students actually who go through the School of Pharmacy. And I think that pharmacy, and certainly in the UK, there's a lot more potential, but there's a huge amount of potential in a country like China, where you're not going to suddenly develop a health service with general practitioners around the corner and things of that sort. Instantly, you may over time develop, which you are, a health service, and I know that's one of the key objectives for the government, for the Chinese government. But pharmacists, in terms of dealing with small ailments, in terms of diagnosis, in terms of long-term conditions like diabetes and so on, they are perfect. I mean, you invented the phrase barefoot doctor in China. Now, in a way, it's sad that was superseded. But I certainly think that pharmacists, in terms of connecting with the community, have great potential. But beyond that, and I've just come back from the Middle East, where there's a huge program of hospital building. Well, China is also engaged now in building a huge number of hospitals. All the issues about the software needed to run a hospital, management of hospitals, and it's not just purely about equipment and drugs and so on. A lot of it's about know-how. And I think there's a lot there that can be done. One of our major companies, Bupa, is in China, dealing not so much with the hospitals, but with the health insurance aspect. So health insurance is a really important area as well, and quite specialist, how you manage the risk involved and so on. So yes, I think there's a lot of collaboration in the health field. As there is in education. I mean, the softer things, if you like, the creative industries, health, education, and the whole progress towards really building a welfare state in China, I think our collaboration could be fantastic, actually.
It's really interesting you mentioned about the health insurance, issue, because when we interviewed Jerry, Grimston, he's the chairman for Standard Life. And he has, their company has quite a big presence in China. And he did mention about the whole healthcare, issues, because it's something really, really important to both countries. Completely.
And of course, Standard Life are also very expert in the pensions area. And, that's an essential part of the welfare state. As people get, age, and they live longer, which of course will happen in China, already is happening in China, and especially where there are small families, the whole issue of pensions becomes more important. And again, our expertise, might come in handy for some of our bigger companies like Standard Life in China.
Great. I'm going to ask you something slightly more difficult, immigration. And I remember in one of your recent speech, you said the Liberal Prime Minister Gladstone in the 19th centuries was strongly pro-free trade and against protectionism. And we as a Liberal Party have been very strong in favor of allowing the free flow of employment between countries and against unfair and unreasonable visa restrictions. However, we know that the current Home Secretary, Theresa May, was giving a speech recently, actually a few days ago, in the Conservative Party conference, fully commit to further reform about, visa restrictions with the introduction of the immigration bill, probably, which will be announced next week. So what do you think the, UK government or various lobby groups should potentially work closely together to ensure, Chinese investors, students and tourists are not affected by any further debates in the whole net migration debate in this country?
I'm afraid that immigration is one of the fault lines between the two coalition parties. And, it's no secret, Vince Cable, Secretary of State, says the same himself, that he doesn't agree with the government approach on immigration. And our view is that where you're prepared to come and work and you've got the skills, you should be able to work, and there should be straightforward for you to be able to do so. And of course, they also, the Conservatives have a different view about Schengen and so on and so forth in terms of the way that our visa and our immigration procedures operate. But what I would very much regret is that we went backwards and we went further, more restrictive for people who really want to come and work. And I very much regret the fact that the post-study work route is not available for students unless they earn something like £23,000 as an intern. Well, earning £23,000 as an intern is a very tall order. So I'm hopeful that we're going to find ways around that. And it could be that as part of the payment for a course, people in a sense, top up the amount that is available for interns. It may be that, the bigger companies do manage to bite the bullet and pay 23,000. We don't yet know quite how it's going to work out, but I'm very much hopeful that because people do need Mandarin speakers and we need Chinese students to get work experience here, postgraduate, that there will be some resolution of this. I mean, life is not all bad because I know that Theresa May has announced certain measures, better measures for tourists getting visas and so on and so forth. But it's all very slow. I mean, basically, I think, have about 1/5 of the number of visitors into London than they do in Paris. I think Paris has about 1 million visitors from China. We get about 200,000. Well, that is because of the visa. I can't believe that London is a less attractive place for Chinese tourists to come to, but it's simply that a Schengen visa gets you around all those countries. A UK visa gets you to Britain and Ireland, and you pay the same or more for us. So, the economics are quite straightforward, basically. So we really do, and it's, I say, the trouble is there's a kind of deadlock in government between the two parties, and there is no easy resolution of this. I know perfectly well what I think, but then I'm a backbencher. I don't have to take responsibility for government policy.
But we really, really appreciate, your advocacy in this area, because I remember, during the time when I was the International Student Officer of National Union of Students UK, and we did try to target, different MPs and members in law to discuss and lobby about the student issue. And I clearly remember at that time, you are probably one of the few really strong advocates in the House of Lords who openly criticize and public support the retention of post-study work visa.
Yes.
And I even, noticed that you organize, some of the Chinese press and all the Chinese, student representative in London during that particular time back to 2012, before the announcement was made by Theresa May. And you asked the question in the House of Lords, questioning why, post-study work visa should be abolished,
yes,
since it has been such a tremendous incentive to attract, international students to study in this country.
Well, we're looking at the figures all the time. I'm deeply worried about the impact at the end of the day on not only on China-Britain relations in that area, but also on the willingness of students to want to come to the UK. I know that a lot of vice-chancellors are also very concerned. So, there's a very strong lobby now to make sure that we don't get further restrictions, and if possible, we push back on the restrictions that are already there. But, it's a permanent battle, which I regret hugely. We shouldn't be in that position. And students should not be treated as migrants. That's the absolute fundamental. Nobody, London First, London and Partners, the Mayor of London, everybody agrees that students should not be treated as migrants. And that, for me, is the fundamental point.
I'm sure, all your amazing work on the, immigration, especially student visa, will always be, eternally grateful by all the, 100,000 Chinese students studying in this country, because, you are the person who really, laid such big landmark to support all the students who will become the big ambassadors between two countries in the long run in a wide range of areas.
Well, that's nice. The trouble is, politicians are only effective if they, are succeeding in getting the policies that they want put into practice. And I'm not there yet, so we'll see.
But thank you so much. Last question from me today. Our president, Xi Jinping, came up with this really brilliant idea about Chinese dream. And he proposed that Chinese dream is something not only going to benefit individual citizens, in China or Chinese citizens, overseas, but also it could be a dream shared by, people from other countries around the world. So what's your opinion about the Chinese dream?
Well, I think it's a very, very interesting idea. I don't think any of us are quite understand what that can consist of. I think I've got an idea about what it might be, because obviously I've studied China for a long time, and I understand a little bit about Confucianism and the harmonies and so on and so forth. And the big trick, though, because it's very important not to relapse into a kind of conservative form of Confucianism, where basically there's a hierarchy and things don't change, because China can't afford to do that. China has to keep innovating. It has to keep moving on. So the big trick for, if you like, a Chinese dream, and it's international and it's domestic in China as well, is how you keep a harmonious society, but you are able to innovate at the same time. Now, that is a really difficult trick, because you have to keep a pace with developments in business, in culture, in politics, in the world, but the harmonies, a harmonious society is absolutely fundamental to what China thinks it's necessary. It's why the Middle Kingdom exists. It's absolutely fundamental. Stability is absolutely fundamental. But aligning the two things to create, if you like, the Chinese dream, that's a big, big ask. And one can't always envisage that's going to, one side is going to get too far. For instance, the environment might get degraded in one way, and then one has to react to that and say, no, I'm sorry, we're not having investment of that kind, which is happening now. And all the time, one has to kind of keep readjusting in order to get the if you like, the balance between innovation and if you like, harmony right. But it's a new kind of Chinese dream. I don't think Confucius would have necessarily invented it. It's something that I think is brand new for the modern China, really.
So do you have a Chinese dream, since you have a very strong connection with China for nearly 40 years?
I think my dream is of people understanding much more about Chinese culture. You see, I think one of the really important things about the rise of China as really what one might call a superpower, although I know that, there's this expression about China thinks it's a mouse, whereas the world thinks it's an elephant. It always, you always have that slightly. China still doesn't really. Many people in China still don't think they are as influential as they are. But I do think that we need more understanding that the world is multicultural. We're not just, for the last 200 years, if you like, the West has dominated. The States, Britain, France, Germany, whereas now we're in a completely multipolar environment. And I think the fact that China has risen means that now there's a much better understanding that, other big countries matter, and that their culture is important. We don't just simply do what American companies or British companies think is the right thing to do. Everybody now has a much more diverse way of operating, and that's really important. So I suppose my dream is probably not quite as elaborate as the president's, but it's really how China can really work with us to improve business, improve trade flows, be more cross-cultural so that we understand much more about Chinese history. Chinese understand a lot about British history. I've heard Wang Qishan talk about the Opium Wars, for heaven's sake, without notes. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But that cross-cultural aspect for me is the most important thing. And if people, if politicians, if business people don't understand how to deal with other cultures, then I'm afraid they're not going to be successful in this modern world.
That's absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. Do you have anything else to talk to our audience from People's Daily Online?
I think I've said quite enough, but it's been very enjoyable. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.